Richard Petty Motorsports and Chevrolet just stole one of Toyota Racing Development's top young prospects, and it looks like Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan's new team has had its name leaked to the public. How's it going, everyone? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. It has been a busy week for silly season news. A couple days ago, Adam Stern and Sports Business Journal reported that Erik Jones was finalizing a deal with Richard Petty Motorsports. We talked a little bit about what this means for Jones's future, what this might mean for Petty's future. We talked about that in yesterday's episode, but today the announcement has become official, and we have some more details to react to. So we're going to spend most of this episode talking about Richard Petty Motorsports' newest young driver, Erik Jones, and how they basically stole him from Toyota. We're going to talk about how big of a win this really is for Richard Petty Motorsports from a competition standpoint, but first, we do have to thank today's sponsor, Illumito. They sent me a shirt and everything, offering one hitch for all your towing needs. Illumito's line of adjustable, interchangeable hitch mounts provide unmatched reliability and versatility to drivers who expect excellence. Illumito kits include 3 fully interchangeable chrome-plated hitch balls and a lightweight extruded aluminum alloy hitch mount that can be adjusted in 1-inch increments. And the largest in each kit has a market-leading towing capacity of 12,000 pounds. They're selling extremely quick. Most on the market are only rated up to 10,000 pounds. The versatile nature and high towing capacity make Illumito an ideal and preferred choice for safely hauling boats, RVs, and trailers. Illumito hitches are available exclusively from Springfield, Missouri-based Uriah Products, a leader in the trailer and towing industry for more than 15 years. Visit illumito.com for more information. A big thank you to Illumito for sponsoring this episode and supporting Out of the Groove. Now we're going to get to Erik Jones. We're going to talk about the details of his deal with Richard Petty Motorsports in just a second, but I want to talk about something that was actually leaked over the weekend a few days back. We've had so much silly season stuff to talk about this week. I hadn't really had a chance to get to it until now, but I first saw this from NASCAR Man on Twitter, a great follow on Twitter, but he found what appears to be like the trademark application. I don't know exactly what it is, but it looks like something that a business would file if you're looking to establish ownership of a new brand or something like that. But as you can see, filed recently, this is for something known as 2311 Racing. It was filed October 12th by a company owned in North Carolina. And if you know anything about Michael Jordan, the man who made the number 23 famous all his years playing for the Chicago Bulls, you gotta believe this is what the new Denny Hamlin Michael Jordan team is going to be called. It makes sense. 23 for Jordan, 11 for Hamlin. I think it's kind of cool and hip that the 11 is in Roman numerals. It looks cool. I mean, and it rolls off the tongue. 2311 Racing. I mean, it's simple, but it works. It's quick. It seems very likely at this point that Bubba Wallace and that team will run the number 23 car next season. I'm just excited to see what the paint schemes are going to look like, what sponsors are going to be brought over, if Michael Jordan and the Jordan brand are ever going to be on the car. I think that's going to be super cool, but there you have it. Not confirmed just yet, but it looks like 2311 Racing is going to be one of the newest teams in NASCAR next season, owned majorly by Michael Jordan, and of course Denny Hamlin has a stake in it as well. So exciting to see what comes of that. Excited for an official announcement. I'm also excited for the merch. I feel like the merch is going to be pretty cool. Anyway, I do want to focus most of this episode on Erik Jones, and we're going to talk a little bit about other silly season possibilities as well, because really with Erik Jones today being announced to the 43 car, other than Hendrick Motorsports, who we're still waiting for them to probably announce Kyle Larson sometime soon, other than Hendrick, this is really the last, I would say, somewhat competitive ride to find a driver for next season. We look at a lot of the cars that are still left. I mean, Go Fast Racing's 32 car. We still don't know what's happening with Ryan Preece in the 37. I mean, that team's like 29th in points. 96 Gaunt Brothers still doesn't have a driver for next season. Spire is still looking to hire a couple drivers, it sounds like, full-time. So the way it looks right now, with Richard Petty Motorsports locking up Erik Jones, with Hendrick more than likely locking up Kyle Larson, most all of the competitive rides for next season have now found drivers. Now, I don't want to overstate what Richard Petty Motorsports is. As we talked about yesterday, I don't think this is a super great team. I don't anticipate them being a playoff team next season, but I do think they can contend. This year with Bubba Wallace, they occasionally would sneak into the top 20 in points, which is a huge improvement for this team given where they were just a couple years ago. But of course, with limited funding and a new driver and a new team, and who knows how that relationship is going to start out, it's hard to say that this team is going to be a playoff team next season. But Erik Jones, and this is what my focus of today's episode is going to be, Erik Jones is an absolute steal when we talk about just pure driving talent and potential upside. Erik Jones is still extremely young, but he's got 4 years now of Cup Series experience in good equipment. He's got a couple big wins. He won the Busch Clash earlier this season. He's a Truck Series champion. He's won a bunch of Xfinity races as well. This is a high caliber driver. This is the highest caliber driver Richard Petty Motorsports has likely had since I mean, I guess when like Everham and the ownership was a little different than it is now, I guess there were some pretty high profile drivers back then. But when we talked about recent years, Eric Almirola hadn't won a whole lot before getting to Richard Petty Motorsports. Bubba Wallace, I think he's decent, but he doesn't have any championships in any of NASCAR's top 3 series. He doesn't have any cup wins. I don't know. I think getting Erik Jones, someone who's had Toyota's blessing for roughly 7-8 years now, a guy who would still be with Toyota, I think, for 2021 if Levine Family Racing hadn't shut down. For Richard Petty Motorsports to land this young talent who still has, 20 years of cup racing ahead of him if he wants. This is a huge win for Richard Petty Motorsports. I'm not saying they and Jones are going to be together for 20 years, but this is clearly a talented driver they now have on their hands. Let's talk about some of the details from today's announcement. Both Richard Petty Motorsports and Erik Jones released some kind of cool videos to promote this thing.
It's 2 numbers, a 4 and a 3. But to those in racing, it's the 43, the number. Today, a new era begins with a 43.
The youngest champion ever in the Camping World Truck Series, Erik Jones wins in 2019.
Sir, I cannot tell you how proud I am of you, Erik Jones. Way to freaking dig, man. All this pressure, and you did it, man.
I gotta admit, it's kind of neat to see Erik Jones in 43 gear, in the 43 hat. I'm an Erik Jones fan. Like I talked about yesterday, I've been following Erik Jones pretty closely since about 2015 when he was in the Truck Series, winning races and winning the championship that year. And so I've been an Erik Jones fan for a while. It's pretty cool to see him in the 43 car with 43 gear and everything. I mean, that is neat. There was always that story about Erik Jones's father, selling his prized Corvette so that Erik Jones could continue racing. Of course, Erik Jones's father passed away tragically just a few years ago, and shortly thereafter, Erik Jones was able to buy back that same Corvette. So there's the Chevy connection there for Erik Jones and Richard Petty Motorsports. So this is going to be great. I am really excited to see what Erik Jones does next year. It's obviously an equipment downgrade from what he was with, with Joe Gibbs Racing, but there's a few statements I want to read or want to talk about here. Andrew Murstein, president of Richard Petty Motorsports, mentions that they're now going to be able to give Erik Jones 100% of their attention, something Jones has never had in his Cup career. Here's what Murstein had to say. Obviously, we are very excited about getting a driver of Erik's capabilities. The stars align perfectly for us. At age 24, we feel he is one of the top young talents in the sport. As a one-car team, we are able to give him 100% of our resources and focus. Based upon recent events for both of us, Erik, the King, and I are very hungry to prove others wrong. This really is a perfect match. So before I talk more about how big a deal this is for Richard Petty, here are the specifics. It's a multi-year deal, apparently. Could be 2 years, could be 5 years, nobody knows for sure. Richard Petty Motorsports is going to stick with Chevrolet, like I mentioned a second ago. That was somewhat called into question earlier this summer when rumors were Denny Hamlin and Toyota were looking at buying Richard Petty and Bubba Wallace staying with the team and possibly turning it into a Toyota team. Those were the rumors a few months back. That now, obviously, since they went and bought up a different team, joined a new team with Michael Jordan and everything, that's not happening with Richard Petty. So Petty's staying as a Chevy team. One of my questions from yesterday, who will the crew chief be? Jerry Baxter is staying with the team and will be the crew chief for Erik Jones next year. I'm a little surprised to hear that because Jerry Baxter joined Richard Petty Motorsports this year in 2020. He had a past relationship with Bubba Wallace. They worked together when Bubba drove for Kyle Busch Motorsports and they won races together. Jerry Baxter coming over this year with Bubba Wallace, and the two of them together have given Richard Petty their best statistical season in more than 3 years. So I'm a little surprised, honestly, that Jerry Baxter isn't moving on with Bubba Wallace, but no, he's sticking with Richard Petty Motorsports, and I mentioned that he used to work at Kyle Busch Motorsports. Baxter, from what I can tell, never directly worked as Erik Jones's crew chief, but they both were at KBM around the same time. So they likely at least have somewhat of a familiarity with each other. They've likely talked or worked with each other, at least in some capacity, before. So Baxter does have a relationship with Erik Jones, and I just mentioned, I think Jerry Baxter has a lot to do with Richard Petty Motorsports' improvement this season. So that should be pretty exciting for Erik Jones. Another important detail, no sponsorship has been announced. They said sponsors will be announced at a later date. That was my second big question from yesterday's episode, because with Bubba Wallace leaving the team and presumably taking a lot of sponsorship with him, like DoorDash, Cash App, and Columbia and more, some of that money, some of those sponsors may have deals with the team that will last for next season, but Erik Jones doesn't bring a whole lot of funding himself. So I have a feeling they're looking to sell races for next season. I'm sure there are gaps currently on their schedule. So I do worry a little bit about that. Richard Petty Motorsports is a team that until about a year and a half ago, when Worldwide Technology made a huge investment into the team and Bubba Wallace, Richard Petty Motorsports, I get the impression, was not doing too well money-wise. With all the sponsors they've been able to rake in this year with Bubba Wallace, some of the improved performance this year, hopefully that puts them in a better financial situation next year and going forward. This is a multi-year deal, so Richard Petty Motorsports fully intends on being around for the long haul. The next-gen car in 2022, of course, is going to change the business model, so perhaps Richard Petty Motorsports really has their eyes set on that, but I am still a little concerned on this department. No sponsors announced, and I have to believe this team is not fully funded, at least at the moment, but hopefully they can work some things out. I mean, it's the 43 car iconic brand. Richard Petty still very much much kind of the face, the figurehead of the organization, even though he doesn't really make a whole lot of the decisions behind the scenes, it seems. I would hope they can sell some sponsorship for Erik Jones, get some decent amount of the season funded, hopefully, and maybe set themselves up well to adopt the next gen car and go from there, where it's supposed to be a lot cheaper to run a competitive Cup Series organization. Now, I want to talk more about how big a deal this is for Richard Petty Motorsports. This is going to sound like I'm just singing Erik Jones all the praise in the world, and I don't want it to sound like that, but Erik Jones, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, Erik Jones is the best driver Richard Petty Motorsports has had in years. He's not the road course expert Marcus Ambrose was, but when we talk about an all-around driving talent, I'll reiterate this. Erik Jones has been in Toyota's system for many years, and up until, I would say, 2020, he's gotten results every year. He won in trucks, won a championship. He won in Xfinity. I said this yesterday. He was one of the few drivers each week that could hang with Kyle Busch. He won Rookie of the Year in the NASCAR Cup Series. He won a race in 2018. He won a race in 2019, a crown jewel, the Southern 500. 2020 has not been great. He has not been very consistent this year. Some of it's him, some of it's the crew, but he's still got a win in the season-opening Busch Clash. I really think Richard Petty Motorsports is in a very good spot competitively next year. David Smith, Motorsports Analytics, he runs the peer rating for each driver, performance in equal equipment rating. And all 4 years Jones has been in the Cup Series, according to his analytics, Erik Jones is ranked in the top 12 in the entire NASCAR Cup Series as far as what he gets out of his equipment, specifically as a driver. And again, from David Smith, Erik Jones in 2020 ranks as the second most efficient passer in the Cup Series. I don't know all the data that goes into collecting those numbers. Perhaps something is inflated somewhere that I don't know about, but as difficult as things have looked on the surface for Erik Jones this year, not getting the results, not winning 7 races like his teammate Denny Hamlin, not making the playoffs like the rest of his teammates. You have to remember that 2020 has been a weird year for a lot of people. Kyle Busch is winless right now. Martin Truex Jr. has 1 win this season. Jimmy Johnson is still winless. Matt Kenseth showed up this year and is running 20th. I mean, like, with no practice, no qualifying, it's been a weird year for a lot of drivers. I don't want to make this as an excuse for Erik Jones, because I do truly believe the results should have been better in 2020, even with all that working against him. When Joe Gibbs Racing announced they were letting Erik Jones go in favor of Christopher Bell, I like I said then, I couldn't really blame them. I think Bell's a really good driver as well, and I just think Toyota and Joe Gibbs Racing were put in a difficult situation there. I don't blame Toyota and Joe Gibbs Racing for letting Erik Jones go. They really didn't have a choice, it sounds like, and I am disappointed that Erik Jones was not able to land for a more competitive organization, a team that's more ready to win right now, like a Hendrick. But at least at Richard Petty Motorsports, Erik Jones, for the first time in his Cup career, will be getting 100% of the organization's attention. And for the first time in Richard Petty Motorsports' recent history, at least, they have a driver who's already a proven Cup winner before he gets to that seat. So while I'm not going to sit here and say that this team's definitely going to make the playoffs or win a couple races next year, I don't think that's going to be the case. I would not be shocked if Erik Jones gets a little more out of that car than we've seen the last 3 or 4 years. Erik Jones has proven to be a very good super speedway racer. We know he's a great short track racer. That's where he grew up. A win to get into the playoffs is not out of the question for Erik Jones. I fully anticipate that team being inside the top 20 in points for most of next season. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs right now. I think there's a lot of competition, like I said earlier this week, between around 10th and like 24th place on the playoff grid, with new teams like Trackhouse and 2311 Racing and all these other competitive teams jumping into the fray next year. I do think it's going to be hard to make the playoffs if you're a team like Richard Petty Motorsports, but I truly believe they can run top 20 most, if not all, races next season. So that will be an improvement, and I think Erik Jones is going to be pivotal in accomplishing those goals. So I'm excited to see what they can do next year. I'm really excited knowing that this is a multi-year deal to see what happens with the next gen car, when theoretically the competition may even up a little bit more in 2022. I mean, still, I think Gibbs and Penske are still going to be the fastest, but teams like Richard Petty might catch up a little bit more in 2022 if I had to guess. So I'm really excited to see what happens a few years down the line, but that's all I have to talk about in this episode. I wanted to focus on Erik Jones and Richard Petty Motorsports, share a little bit more of my thoughts. That's all I've got for today's episode. Let me know what you guys think of Erik Jones and Richard Petty Motorsports coming together to join this new partnership, especially with all the details given here today. Let me know what you all think. A big thank you again to Illumato for sponsoring this episode. Be sure to check them out at illumato.com. Be sure to subscribe as well if you're new to the channel. We talk NASCAR almost every single day. And as always, a big thank you to my fantastic Patreon supporters. You've got them all listed right here. I really appreciate all the support on the videos, especially recently. Really does mean a lot. Thank you all for watching. I will see you again very, very soon. We still have more to talk about before I head up to Texas Motor Speedway next week. So, well, I guess this weekend. So, a lot to talk about. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again really, really soon.